We're diving into one of the most overwhelming parts of divorce. Like there's one that's more overwhelming than the other, right? But I feel like there probably is, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's your end of things, and that is the financial side. So, guys, Kristina helps bring clarity, structure, and calm to decisions that can feel confusing and emotional, so that you can move forward in confidence versus fear. Because as Miranda and I talk about here each and every month, there's a whole heck of a lot of that, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Miranda, don't you wish we had somebody like Kristina when we were going through our divorces?
I wish I had all of the divorce defenders, but financially, especially, I was young, really young. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of money from my payout from my house that I did not expect to come into. And there are a lot of opportunistic people around. So not only someone that could tell me, but someone I could trust.
100%. Kristina, first of all, before I even dive into it, since both Miranda and I know you, I'm all like, oh, Kristina's on. But it might be nice for our audience for you to just say a little bit about who you are and, that kind of thing before I start diving into the nuts and bolts of all of this.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me on today. Super exciting. You're my first podcast ever. So my name is Kristina with a K, and I help people make informed financial decisions, whether they're planning ahead or navigating divorce. So Bloom Divorce Advisory Services is a mouthful, and it is my divorce financial consulting practice. So if a client is considering or navigating divorce, I would work with them in that capacity as a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst Practitioner through Bloom. So we help with kind of, depending on the scope of the case, it could be the full case, so we're helping at the very beginning and we're getting all of the documents and we're organizing, we're analyzing, we're doing the financial affidavit, marital balance sheet, property settlement, all of the things. Or it could be, a very high level, hey, we're towards the end. I want an intensive 3-hour session to kind of break everything down. So it really is customized to the client, which is really nice.
Love that. And thank you for what you do. And thank you for being as supportive of women as you are. I know you're supportive of men as well, and you do work with men as well. But on the divorce defenders, that's kind of our thing, right? Is we're women supporting women. So thank you for being a part of that and for all that you do, because this is one of those big, giant areas of life in general, not just divorce, where it can be really overwhelming and it can be confusing and it's a big deal. So when somebody's first facing divorce, what are you seeing is the biggest financial mistake that they make because they're reacting instead of planning?
So I think for me, first, the Amicable Divorce Network, I'm very big on being as prepared as possible throughout the process, because I think it saves a lot of energy, resources, and time. It's one of the big reasons I love the divorce defenders, because all of us bring such wonderful skills to this whole process. But I think it could be potentially involving your attorney too early. So if you aren't prepared, or you don't have, your access to documents, or you don't really have a game plan, and you're just like, I'm going to hire the attorney, and maybe you have actually retained a litigator, someone who's ready to take it to court. They're okay with the process being drawn out for 2 to 5 years. They're okay with constantly billing you. I think that could be a really expensive misstep. Because I think a lot of times when you're working with a professional that is with an hourly billable rate, you don't think about the time. You don't think about, are they being billed in increments of 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? If you send them an email or CC them on something, are you going to get a bill for that? And how much of that could potentially be avoided if you had done a lot of prep work up front?
I totally agree. And in working with many of the cases that I have worked with, because, I'm the real estate professional on the divorce defenders, I see that. And I've had people that have said to me, hey, don't copy my attorney on, things need because they read the email and then all of a sudden I have a bill the next day. So that 100% does happen. And I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that it might be something that, like you mentioned, people don't really realize, and it ends up being kind of a money pit. So you mentioned having a clear financial picture, and that said to me, like, hey, get your ducks in a row so that before the attorney comes into play, if they come into play, so that the attorney doesn't get the ducks in the row for you. Is that what I'm hearing? So tell me a little bit about that and how you guide people through that.
Sure. So when a client does a full case with me, I'm a flat fee. So they're not going to be getting unexpected bills. If for some reason it goes over scope, it's communicated far in advance, but I've never had to bill additional from that. But we are able to really go in, link accounts, pull transaction history. I have a lot of like getting organized material for them. So if they don't quite know where to start, we pull the credit report, we pull something called an early warning report. We look at an IRS transcript, and it's very helpful because then we can start to see what kinds of accounts have been recorded, and then are we missing anything? And if the other party is wanting to participate in the process, it does make it a little bit easier. So my practice is a little unique. Even if I'm working with one party as the financial advocate, they have the option to allow the other party to enter the process because they value trust and transparency. And usually there's like a little bit of a hiccup in the beginning, and then after it's fine. They'll link the accounts. You don't have to worry about necessarily having the attorney do like subpoenas and motions to compel. I definitely think it's important to have a legal professional involved in the process. I'm not an attorney. I don't provide any legal advice. I don't draft, I don't file, I don't do any of that. I collaborate with the legal professional. But there are different ways to do it. You can have a consulting attorney versus an attorney on record, and, unbundled services and different things like that.
Do you bump into like what Miranda just said, I feel is really, really important. And she had mentioned that back when she was going through what she went through, she had a bunch of money and she was getting guidance from people. How exactly did you pose that? You were getting guidance from people who might not have had your best interests in mind?
Maybe a little opportunistic,
Yeah.
or they might have had good intentions, but they might have been or I had a real estate agent, my second divorce, who really pushed me to buy a house, knowing that I was thinking buying a house was the best thing for me. And I kind of thought it was, more out of pride though, just because I'm like, oh, I don't need a man, I can do this on my own. Really, it was like the worst possible time because it was 2006. And then I lost, it just completely went upside down in a few years. And I could have rented a house and had so much money left over, but there was something in me that told me I need to do this. So she kind of validated that, knowing that she was going to make money off the sale, which there's nothing wrong with making money off the sale, but so I don't think she was doing it in a unscrupulous way. I just think that I should have maybe spoken to somebody else or gone to someone financially smart who could have said, well, let's weigh this. If you do this, here's the pluses and minuses. If you do this, here's the pluses and minuses. Then you can make an educated decision.
For sure. And definitely market statistics and market condition information is important in there too.
Right?
But that aside, Kristina, do you run into situations like that? Have you talked with people that say the same thing Miranda just did?
Absolutely. And I think the home can be a very hot topic because especially if you had a lot of memories there, or you've been in the home for a long time, or being a homeowner is part of your identity, it can be really difficult to maybe consider that that's not part of your identity temporarily for your next chapter. I did an advanced transition planning certification, which was really cool. And it gave me a lot of tools to kind of help clients make decisions. Everything from financial triage to different types of visual representations when they're making decisions. And I think it's helpful when you have a financial professional wrapped in the mix, like a CDFA, because they've had specialized training for divorce. And we can show, okay, this is your baseline expenses if you're keeping this asset. This is how it's going to change because now we have one income in the household and potentially support versus having two incomes. And then we're doing our pre and post divorce budget. And I think when you can kind of see the numbers and you're like, ooh, I'm not going to have the same quality of life because my mortgage payment is, 70% of my income, then it makes it a little bit easier. It's still a difficult decision.
Yeah.
But it makes it a little bit easier to say, okay, maybe I rent for the next year. I get, my savings built up, and then we make another decision moving forward.
Well, and if I can add that there's two things I want to say. One, emotions, and I'm not self-promoting.
100%.
Anybody, therapist, me, non-family person, non-emotionally involved person who doesn't even have to give you advice, who you can just say everything to and kind of work through it and talk it out. What do I really actually want? Am I going on getting them back or getting an upper hand or resentment, or am I going off of what's the best financial decision for me and my children? And so taking that emotional piece out of it and having someone to talk to is so important. And the other piece of that, the follow through to that, is not making decisions out of survival mode. And we, I think we all do it as women, but especially if you've got a lot of kids and you're already busy, or maybe you're not in the healthiest situation, you're not operating from sound mind. You're operating from just get me out of this, get me through this. And we don't want to make long-term decisions and that short-term mindset. So someone like you, that's why that team component is so important. Someone should work with someone like you, but they should also work with someone on their emotions. And they should also be making sure that they're getting enough sleep and they're getting enough, all the things that we always talk about. But I don't think it's enough to just take one piece of it. I think we kind of need to look at it as a whole. And I wish probably the biggest piece of advice that would have helped me, Kristina, is you don't have to decide right now.
Yeah.
Yes. You have to not lock yourself into something. You can take some time and think about this, but our mind's like, get me out of this. So if you're out there and you're listening, breathe. You don't have to make a serious decision today. You might be pressured from the other side, but stop and think about all of the fallout and all the possibilities that there are to explore, I guess.
Thank you for adding that, Miranda. Kristina, question for you is, even outside of divorce, I feel like people get overwhelmed by financials. I feel like the whole thing is really anxious for a lot of people that I know personally, and I'm sure that beyond who I personally know, that same thing is true. Do you have any sort of and I'm sure that you do, but how do you handle that overwhelm? How do you handle that emotional piece where, yes, I agree, Miranda, bringing in somebody else to be part of the team that handles that is a great idea, but when you're speaking to the client, that person might not necessarily be there to help, navigate those emotions for that person. How do you do it?
So I think it's a lot of tools from my first designation program. So I'm also a fully licensed financial advisor. I do traditional financial planning. It's a separate engagement from my divorce practice. And it's a very common theme across both sides. The CFEI credential was Certified Financial Education Instructor. And it was very, very eye-opening about, the amount of financial illiteracy that there is in the United States, how, the curriculum isn't really intertwined into our school systems. Parents aren't necessarily having financial conversations with children. And it's kind of one of those things, at least my experience, I think my parents did the best they could with the knowledge and tools that they had. But I turned 18, I moved out, I learned what bills were, I learned a lot of things. And so I think when I'm working with clients, either on the financial planning side or the divorce side, it's kind of unfortunate, but especially with women, I will hear something along the lines of, you're going to think I'm so stupid or silly, or, there's this level of almost like anxiety or shame or frustration because they're not as involved in the finances as they thought that they should be, or they're not aware of what kind of accounts they have or how they work together. And so I think one of my superpowers is meeting clients where they are. And, it's okay if you don't know the difference between a taxable and tax deferred account. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to help you understand how all of the pieces fit together.
I love that. And thank you for doing that. And I feel like one of those ways that would help me reduce my anxiety if I were working with you is to get that bird's eye view, is to get that picture. So when you are collecting data, what does that look like, especially in the case of somebody who maybe, like you said, wasn't as involved in the finances? Maybe they don't know all of the accounts that they have. I recently just had a case where I had a mom who didn't know all of the properties they owned together. Mm-hmm. And so that was, a fact-finding mission. Do you do the same?
I do. So it's funny you called it a picture. I do have some visual reports that I use. So when I'm working with a client on either side, financial planning or divorce, I do kind of a communications preferences exercise on our first meeting. So I understand how they learn, how they best interpret information, if they need visual, if they need it written, do you need a narrative? Do you need ahead of time? Do you need bullet points? So that way I can make sure that I'm really meeting them where they are. And one of the first things that I show is, I call it a financial snapshot. So it's literally a one-page overview of all of the accounts we've identified, all of the members of the household, all of the properties, whether it's physical homes or it's property like a vehicle or anything like that. And it makes it a little bit easier when you can kind of see it all in one picture. And I've even had clients who will print it and take it to mediation. And then when you're talking about something, they just kind of like do a little check mark. And it's very, very helpful to kind of keep it organized as well and make sure nothing is falling through the cracks.
Wouldn't that have been nice, huh, Miranda?
It would. And I love so much that you get to know people on an individual basis, because going back to what you said a second ago about shame, that word shame and self-worth, and that it's so much deeper than just a shame about money. It's like a deeper. And to be able to meet people where they're at and eliminate that. And I think also having a flat fee plays into that, because I was always, do I bring this to them? Do I not? This is the end of the world. Is it not? And the attorney, okay, there might be some great ones out there, but some of the ones I worked with were just like, sure, I'll talk to you about anything, because I'm just going to.
Meters running. Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. And I didn't really need to. So knowing that stress and pressure is off of talking to you about it, I think helps emotionally. People say like, oh, I'm being seen. I'm being taken care of here. I'm not just a number. So credit to you for that.
Yeah. And I feel like people show up differently, because when I first started my practice, I did the traditional, I did by the billable hour. It made me anxious. It definitely, I feel like the client was a little bit anxious. But people show up differently. When I am doing the flat fee package, like, yes, I'm still keeping track of time, but it's not in the same capacity. They're not going to be getting a bill after every session. And I feel like people are much more present when they're meeting with me, because they're not necessarily as mindful of this. Like, they are mindful of the time, but it's not to the same degree as it was when I tried to do hourly billing. And I just feel like flat fee is so much easier, because divorce can be a very stressful and unpredictable process, and having some predictability is helpful.
Totally agree. This next question is really the last one that I had prepared for today, and it's for both of you, really. Kristina, you mentioned that you're settlement minded when you're, working with your clients, and that you're helping them to provide, really an informed approach to going into things, right? How does that, in your experience, reduce conflict, protect relationships, and just make things go more smoothly for all parties involved, especially when there's children?
100%. And that's actually, I do free consultations, and that's part of what I cover in my consult is I'm settlement minded. I'm a member of the Amicable Divorce Network. My goal is not to deplete assets unnecessarily through conflict. It's not to implode the family unit. I do feel very strongly, especially like what I was saying before with women, when there's that level of anxiety or shame, it's kind of like a roadblock. Like, they can't move forward. If you don't understand the different financial components of your case, or you don't understand what you need to move forward, it can be very difficult. So I think by meeting the client where they are, by doing a lot of the prep work, by inviting the other party in if they want to be a part, we're able to literally put everything on the table. I let them know I only handle financial. I'm not an attorney. I don't do anything legal. I can't hurt you or anything like that. And it kind of becomes almost like an open dialogue in a way. Now, maybe they're just talking to me and I'm the one who's kind of sorting some of the information, or maybe they're actually talking together. But I've seen where, maybe they have several tax deferred accounts that need to be divided. And when I explain, okay, a quadro is necessary for these ERISA-based plans like your 401k. And one of the benefits is, yes, you do have to pay for a quadro to be prepared, but it will allow you to take your distribution and not have that 10% early withdrawal penalty. And it is so interesting to me because sometimes I'll have the other partner who will say, oh, can we pull all of the tax deferred dollars that they're going to get from the 401k so they don't have to pay that penalty? And the answer is yes, if they're agreeable. And that's one of the beautiful things about kind of being in the amicable realm is it doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50. It can be whatever works for the parties. And what's helpful too is, personal finance is personal. If somebody is a stay-at-home mom and they're a lower income earner, a tax deferred account might suit them very well, but they also may need liquid dollars. Versus if someone's a high income earner, they're probably going to be more protective of their after-tax dollars. So it's kind of learning, what are the values of each person? What is everything that's available on the table? And how can we come to an agreement that works for both parties? And a lot of times, if I'm introduced very early on in the process, the clients can tend to get to an agreement, or we can work on a proposal. It gets sent to them. They give us their feedback, we tweak it, I revise it, give it back to the attorney, they draft, send it back to them, they say yes. And then they're filing something called a summary consent decree in Arizona, which, not a legal person, but my understanding is it's a little bit kinder because you're not formally serving the other person. And then you have your 60-day waiting period, and then you're done.
Thank you for that explanation. Miranda, what are your thoughts or any input on that situation? Have you seen more amicable divorces in your experience? How do you think what Kristina does could create more amicable divorces?
Yes, I have. In fact, on my own, I went from highly contentious to cannot, restraining order, cannot be around each other, to sit in the kitchen. Let's hash this out. Never step foot in a courtroom, or I'm in a courthouse even, only to file originally. So I've seen the swing, and I think it comes from so much of what your state emotionally. And so if you have, what knowledge is power, right? We always say that. So if you are given facts and you are given things to think about, it kind of lets a guard down and eases the emotion, because someone is telling you, here's how this can benefit you, here's how this can benefit them. And to have the cards on the table and just be honest about it, I think is huge, because the attorneys are gonna, and I don't want to think I'm bashing them, but they're gonna, I've had it where they pit against each other, or they have literally advised me to do something that was probably not helpful or amicable, because it continued sort of a fight. Not saying all, that's just been my experience in some of them, because I've had a few. But if the cards are on the table, and I had one great attorney who was like, okay, here's the deal. If this happens, this and this. If this happens, this and this. Gave me the pros and cons and was a straight shooter. And I really, really appreciated that. And that same situation helped me okay, what do I really want to do here? What makes the most sense? I'm not operating from anything else, just what makes the most sense for me. And I think that can only be helpful, because what is the point what is the point long-term of dragging these things out and not being amicable, right? What are we getting out of that? We're just tantrum, pout, making somebody pay. It's all about really selfish motives when you break it down. And I have been in the position where no matter what I did, the other person was not going to work with me. So I get that. Sometimes you can't be amicable. I understand that so well. But a lot of the times you can really help make it more amicable. And somebody like Kristina would really help in that process to go from 0 to, attorney court. There's a middle ground and other places to explore that I don't think we always think about. I think maybe society tells us, oh, now you're going to go to court. Now you're going to fight. Now you're going to, you don't have to. There's other choices. There's other options.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you, ladies. This was such a great conversation. Miranda, do you have anything else for Kristina?
I do. I want to ask you one quick question, because there's something that, as much as I love supporting women through divorce and what I've been through, my mess is my message. I can help you. But I've also been really excited lately to talk about helping people before they get married, and kind of going back to the other side of it. And let's prepare, whether it's a remarriage or your first time. Let's talk about how, or fixing a current marriage that maybe you don't want a divorce and you don't realize there's another option. So do you work with people, or have you thought about on the other end how to prepare so that woman doesn't be blindsided with, I didn't know we had properties. I don't know the bank account. I don't know. You know what I mean? Have you ran into that situation where you're able to help people prepare for marriage?
Yes. So that's what's so kind of interesting, because I do have two separate practices, but they're almost, they kind of feed into one another. On the traditional financial planning side, I love working with couples. I have lots of clients that are couples, and it's always interesting to me because I've also done mediation training. And so sometimes when I'm doing that communications preferences exercise, or I'm explaining kind of when we're in a flow state financially versus maybe when we're stuck in the emotions that we can feel, I ask questions like, what's your earliest money memory? And it's always eye-opening when maybe one partner is like, I get really defensive and upset when I see them spending. And then we learned that they grew up with a parent who brought a calculator to the grocery store and made them put stuff back because it didn't fit. And so I just work with them in a traditional financial planning sense. And then, of course, after the divorce, if the client wants to continue the relationship, they just move right back on over to the financial planning side. And then we just prepare for their next chapter.
I love that. And ladies, if you're out there, we talk about divorce, but you're probably going to get married again. And you should. But also you should think about all the reasons why you got a divorce and what things you weren't sure of or knew about or prepared for, and then do that before you get married. So maybe, I know financial is a big piece for some women.
Totally agree. And it's so, think back to that time. You're in love, you're BFFs, you're going to be able to trust this person forever. Like, we've all been there, right? So what a weird conversation to have, right? What a weird conversation to bring up when you're in that stage. But I can tell you, Miranda just told you, Kristina's probably like, yeah, you need to have that conversation before you end up tying that knot, and wish that you had done it.
Well, and let me just tell you, if it's weird or uncomfortable, then stop and ask yourself why. I got married so young both times that I didn't realize that something was wrong if you couldn't be totally honest and have all of these things discussed beforehand. I didn't realize that, like, you should be able to do that. So you should be able to do that.
And that's what I love about the financial planning side, because it is comprehensive. Like, we're working on the strategy behind all of the financial stuff. If they want to implement the advice with me, they're more than welcome to, because I am fully licensed. I can open the accounts. We can look at insurances. We can look at all the things. But when we do, we cover education planning, estate planning, tax planning, investments, risk management, and retirement. And the estate planning piece, sometimes it makes the client squirm just for like 2 seconds, but I would be doing a disservice if I didn't bring up the estate planning piece and, hey, have you guys discussed a prenup?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll be like, oh, no, I don't want to think about that. And it's kind of one of those things like, okay, well, if you're doing a will or you're doing a trust for, control over how things will be divided when you're no longer here, like, it's kind of that same principle. And I know prenups can kind of have like a stigma attached to them, but I think it can be one of the best things for a relationship, because you're literally putting all of the cards onto the table.
Yeah.
You're disclosing any debt that you have. Even if you don't have a lot of assets, it can be really helpful because, again, it's all on the table. It's all identified. God forbid you actually have to go through a divorce. It's a lot easier because you do have that starting point.
I totally agree. And I love what you said, Miranda. If it feels uncomfortable, why does it feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Let's chase that, right? Let's follow that line and see where that line begins. Because that is a potential flag. Don't know what color, but it's a potential flag, right?
Well, and we just are like, oh, we'll worry about it then. Or it'll be fine, or we'll figure it out then. And it's like, no, that's a coping mechanism. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to feel it.
Exactly. Do it.
Face it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Totally agree. All right, guys. Kristina. So I have your contact information in the show notes to make it easy for our audience to just click and connect with you. But I always like to give an opportunity for our guests to mention as well if you've got anything in particular coming up, like any great webinars that you want to mention or anything like that. Now is the time to do that.
I don't have it set in stone for the date, but I recently had a Women, Money, and Power workshop, which was really fun. And I'm looking to repeat it soon. Debating about whether I'm going to do it in person or via the web, because it is about to get 100+ degrees in Arizona. So it might be easier to stay at home in the air conditioning. So that'll be kind of TBD, but you can always find resources on my website. And I know Bloom Divorce Advisory Services is a mouthful, so it's just bloomdas.com. And I believe it's on my resources tab. If I have any events coming up, it'll be listed there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being here with us, Kristina. Thank you for being a part of the Divorce Defenders. We love having you and all of your experience and your expertise on that team. And we love supporting women. Again, we won't not talk to men, guys. Okay. I want to make that very clear. We're not discriminating. We just are a group of women that are really passionate about supporting other women. So that's what we do. If you're finding value in this podcast, and I know that you are because you keep on coming back for more, then hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That's our handle. Reach up, do us a favor, and click subscribe, or really click follow or subscribe on whatever platform you are listening or watching us on. Miranda and I will really appreciate that. That just tells us to keep on doing what we're doing, keep showing up here with amazing guests like Kristina. If you prefer to listen podcast style on your favorite podcast platform, please do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. There you will find us. Do the same. Click like or follow or download or notify or whatever options it gives you there, and you will never miss a beat. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or disconnected from yourself? Miranda Ray offers one-on-one private sessions designed to help you reconnect with yourself. Gain tools for emotional healing, build confidence, and step into your power with compassionate guidance every step of the way. You deserve peace. You deserve clarity. You deserve to feel good again. Let Miranda help you get there. Take the first step toward a brighter, more balanced you. Reach out to Miranda now.